Hello, this is Felt.Buzz. I'm doing an author reading of my free write story, which is Elma. There are 12 episodes I'm going to be reading today because I was on holiday last week, so I didn't get to do the reading last Saturday. So it's episodes 31 to 42, I think. And better get started. Anyway. Irritation level rising to critical. You going to finish your sandwich, dear? Nancy asked. Elma shook her head and put it back in the box. Bill looked inquiringly and Elma nodded. He grabbed hold of it, tucked right in. I've lost my appetite, Mother, she said. I don't think you're telling me the whole truth. Nancy reached into the basket and pulled out a banana. Only one? She asked. Shall we share? She said to Bill. He nodded, and Elma watched as her mother peeled the fruit, breaking it in half and passed the big half to Bill. Elma could feel her irritation level rising to critical. Are you going to tell me the truth, Mother? She said. Her voice was high, loud, and felt just like she had as a teenager, almost 60 years ago. Okay, dear, Nancy said. I'll level with you. This whole thing has got to do with the mice you were supposed to take to the monkey's wedding, but... She looked at Bill and smiled. As usual, my daughter was far too headstrong and wouldn't do as she was told, so the mice never went, and goodbye nice to the senior disappeared into another dimension, and that was that. Elma looked at her mother. Mice? Elma was getting a little bit more than just annoyed now. Mother, are you on drugs or something? Because all this talk of mice and monkeys' weddings and such, it's just a little bit crazy. Nancy smiled. Yeah, it's a bit crazy. Unlike sitting by a huge lake of milk underneath a giant tree with a talking flea and a 103-year-old mother in another dimension. No, dear, I'm not on drugs. She finished eating the banana and used a tissue to wipe her mouth. Now, dear, we need to play a game of detectives. Elma looked at her mother. What are you talking about now, Mother dear? Nancy's smile broadened. Well, dear, in order to put the dimensions back in their proper place, we need to work out which dimension we're in now. And to do that, we need to do a little bit of investigation. You know, like in the detective stories on TV. Elma raised her eyebrows. Who are you? She said, sarcasm dripping from her lips like honey from a hot spoon. Miss Marple? Nancy laughed. No, dear, I think I'm much more like Magnum P.I. Actually, Elma could imagine her mother as Magnum P.I. All she needed was the Hawaiian shirt and a moustache. Her mother didn't have a moustache, but she did have a lot of the cocky, know-it-all attitude that annoyed Elma whenever she had the misfortune to watch Magnum. Okay, she said. Let's play detective, she said. Where do we start? Nancy sprung up onto her feet like a cat in one fluid movement. How the hell did a 103-year-old do that? Elma couldn't do that 60 years ago, let alone now. Well, we're going to start by shutting up a bit, dear, Nancy said, so I can listen to what Hubert is trying to tell me. Elma assumed the tiny flea was sitting by her mother's ear. She couldn't see him. Her eyesight wasn't that good. Herbert says we need to find the homeless man. Okay. Any particular homeless man? Elma asked, beginning to think this was going to be a very long day. Nancy shrugged. Apparently, we'll know him when we see him. Elma huffed. Her mother raised her eyebrows. Was that a huff, young lady? She asked. I'm nearly 80 years old, Mother, Elma said, and huffed again. I don't think I qualify as a young lady any more. Nancy raised her eyebrows still further. Elma thought there was a real danger the eyebrows might push her mother's hair off her head if they went any higher, then fly off up into space. She giggled. She felt a wee bit giddy. What's the matter with you, girl? Mother said, her eyebrows still pretty high on her head. Nothing, Elma said, laughing so hard she had to bend over because it was hurting her stomach. Do you know what's going on? Elma heard her mother ask Bill. No, he said, which made Elma laugh even harder for some reason. She lost her marbles, do you think? She heard her mother say. I think, Bill said. We've all had a rather difficult day. Elma continued to laugh for some time, whilst Bill and her mother finished packing everything up. Nancy told Elma that Hubert was telling Elma that she needed to get a grip, and that the extended fits of laughter for another 2 to 3 minutes. After she managed to give herself a good shake and put herself together. "Feel better, dear?" Nancy said. Elma nodded. "I haven't had a laugh like that in years." Nancy nodded. "You're acting a bit strange, dear, if you don't mind me saying. Come on." And she set off round the lake. Bill offered to take Elma's basket, but she refused. "You've got your parasol to carry, Bill. I've got my basket." After a while, in the distance, Elma could see something on the edge of the lake. As she got nearer, she could see it was a shop. A shop? Out here? In the middle of nowhere? By a lake of milk? What could they possibly be selling? As she got nearer, Elma spotted a sign outside. "Bargain!" it read. 40% off all trips across the lake in the milkshaker. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Bill said. By the door of the shop sat a man. He was smartly dressed in what looked like an outfit belonging to an old-fashioned English city gent. Pinstripe suit, bowler hat, and umbrella. There was a sign on the floor by his highly polished shoe that said, "Homeless. Please help." Elma couldn't help but think this was not the stereotypical homeless person's outfit. She nudged her mother. "Is this the homeless guy we need to talk to?" she whispered. Her mother shrugged. "Maybe," she said. "Excuse me," Elma said, approaching the man. "Hate to bother you, but I was told by a flea that used to be huge and now is normal size that I needed to talk to a homeless person. Do you think that might be you?" The man stood up rapidly and tipped his hat in a very outdated way of greeting. "Good day to you, madam," he said. "I've been waiting exactly 1 year for you to arrive. I'm beginning to give up all hope." Nancy clapped her hands together. "Hubert has done a little dance of joy," she said, smiling. "He's tap dancing on my earlobe, whistling a happy tune. I assume he's glad we've all met." A smile dropped from her face with a clang, and a frown formed in its place. "But if it carries on for too long," she said, "and get right on my nerves." Elma went up to the smartly dressed man and held out her hand. "My name's Elma," she said. "That mad old woman with the dancing flea on her earlobe is my mother, Nancy, and this man," she pointed at Bill, who was standing holding his parasol, looking slightly awkward, "is Bill." The man shook her hand. "Pleased to meet you, Elma," he said. "My name's Bones. Jason Bones." Elma laughed. The man looked confused. "Sorry," Elma said. "You introduced yourself like a well-known fictional secret agent." The man, Mr. Bones, smiled. "I don't really do fiction," he said. "The world's so strange already, I don't think you need to waste your time making things up." Elma nodded. "Yeah," she said. "You're probably right." Bill coughed. "Excuse me," he said. "What do you think we should do next?" Mr. Bones smiled. "We need to take a ride on that." He pointed to a very strange rickety contraption that sat on a lake of milk. Bill looked unhappy. "Yes, that's what I rather feared." Elma wasn't best pleased either. She assumed, right as it happened, that this was the infamous milkshaker, and that they were going out across the lake. The ride was not going to be particularly smooth. Nancy pointed up at the sky. "We'd better get a move on," she said. "Looks like storm clouds." Elma followed Nancy's finger. There, up in the sky, were several clouds. They looked as though they were full of milk. "Come on," said Mr. Bones. He walked up to the shop door and opened it. Elma heard a pleasant ting-ting of a bell that made her think of shops she'd visited with her mother in her youth. "I'm coming!" a woman yelled from somewhere on the other side of the counter. The shop reminded Elma of the tourist trap shop she'd ever been in. It was wall to wall with tacky souvenirs, scratch cards, postcards, toys and sweets, and buckets and spades, and just brilliant things. She couldn't help but smile. A rather large woman pushed her way through a doorway at the back of the shop. She was smiling until she saw Mr. Bones. "Oi!" she said, scratching her head, as if she had a whole head full of Herberts dancing on her skull. "I've told you, if you aren't buying, bugger off. I don't care what the weather's doing. It could be raining camembert for all I care. Get out!" Mr. Bones smiled and politely tipped his hat. "Good day to you, madam," he said. "Today you'll be pleased to know I'm buying." The woman scratched her head again and harumphed. Elma stood back and watched Mr. Bones as he calmly asked the large woman for tickets for the milkshaker. "It's going to rain," she said huffily. "You'll get wet, you know." She narrowed her eyes at Mr. Bones. "Thought you didn't like to get wet." Mr. Bones smiled and shook his head. "Madam, I do not. Certainly when one has been waiting outside for a year for these good people," he gestured at Bill, Nancy and Elma, "one appreciates a bit of shelter, particularly when there's a cheese storm brewing." The woman glared at Mr. Bones. "I don't run a homeless shelter," she said. "I told you that. I don't care what the weather's like." She held out her hand. "That'll be 43 miniature breeze, please." Mr. Bones looked at Elma. She stared at him blankly. "I don't carry cheese," she said eventually. She was slightly surprised when the mother stepped forward and said, "Have you got change for a truckle of cheddar?" The woman harumphed again and opened up the till. Elma watched as the mother took a rather large truckle of cheese from somewhere under her dress. She shuddered to think where that had been stored, but she guessed it wasn't refrigerated. "I don't get it," said Bill. "There are regular cheese storms, and why do you accept payment in cheese in this strange land?" He looked over at Mr. Bones. "Why haven't you got any cheese to trade with?" Mr. Bones smiled. "Oh, it's true. We do have plenty of cheese falling from the sky. It's just the wrong type of cheese. Camembert storms are very common, but cheddar and brie are almost impossible to find." Bill nodded, like that made perfect sense. Elma decided to ignore everyone because they were all insane, and she would have a good look round the store. It seemed to be pretty normal considering, and very well stocked. There was a particularly good fruit and veg section. She went and had a look. There were some lovely looking cherries, red, plump and glossy, just how she liked them. She picked one and popped it in her mouth. "Oi!" said the fat woman. "You try your buy." She looked over at Nancy. At Nancy. "I'll add that to your bill." "Right," the fat woman said, handing a ticket to the milkshaker to Nancy. "You better get going. There's a depression coming." "Depression?" Elma said, looking up from the cherries. "Weather depression, dear. Area of low pressure," the woman said. "It's driving the clouds towards us. There's going to be a hell of a storm coming. You really don't want to be out on the lake during that." Elma nodded. "I don't think I want to be out on the lake at all," she said. "But apparently that's where we're going." He followed the woman out through a door on the back of the shop. There was a wooden jetty that led out onto the lake, and Elma saw a large thing on the milky surface that might have been described as vaguely boatish. "Oh dear," Bill said when he saw the contraption. Mr. Bones laughed. "Don't worry," he said. "It isn't quite as bad as it looks." His tone wasn't entirely convincing. "Oh, good," Bill said. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed the small little visit from Minty, my dog, during one of those. Don't know whether you caught that or not. Anyway, thank you and see you soon. Bye.